SLT offer ගොඩයි අවුරුද්දම සුවයි සුවයි.
SLT අලුත් මෙගා ලයින් කනෙක්ෂන් වලට 50%ක දීවන. තවත් ඔෆර් ගැන දැනගන්න 121 අමතන්න.
Tonight, expanding horizons. Sri Lankan Airlines CEO speaks on how the management hopes to revive the carrier.
The number one priority is to renegotiate some of the leases, and plans are on the way to look at destinations like Frankfurt or Paris.
Nabbed abroad. 4 Sri Lankans detained in the UK over suspicions of terrorist links. Stick to the agenda. IMF reiterates the need for a prudent policy mix in the run-up to Sri Lanka's elections.
It is critical in this context that market confidence is being maintained and
Conditional consent. North Korea demands that the United States bring the right attitude to the discussion table. All that and much more coming up on First at 9 this Saturday, the 13th of April 2019.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhamkek Naik. Let's start to look at the local stories. Now, Sri Lankan Airlines recently announced the formulation of a new 5-year strategic business plan in a bid to revive the loss-making carrier. An expansion of routes was in fact one of the features included in the plan. During a discussion with the foreign media outlet, Chief Executive Officer of the national carrier, Vipula Gunathilaka, went into detail on how he intends to do it.
Sri Lankan Airlines recently in a media communique announced the formulation of a new 5-year strategic business plan for the period 2019 to 2024. The plan is formulated with the objective of transforming itself into a financially viable organisation airline group with a high brand visibility and a global reputation for excellence, while turning Sri Lanka into a strategic hub for air travel and air cargo in the Asia-Africa-Middle East region. In such a backdrop, the Chief Executive Officer of Sri Lankan Airlines joined a discussion with the website Air Transport World in London recently and spoke about the challenges he faced after taking over the airline.
Yes, there are a lot of challenges, but I was well aware of the challenges when I took over the responsibility, and I am confident with the team I have and also with the support of the government that I'll be able to turn around and bring the airline to a decent state. Financial condition is not that satisfactory. We have been losing money ever since the departure of Emirates, and unfortunately 75% of those losses have been financed through loans. So addressing the structure of the balance sheet is one challenge, but which I leave it to the shareholder, though we have made representations from time to time to look at the capitalization of the airline. But what I am doing as a CEO is I have crafted the business plan with the help of my management, and we are trying to implement that to run the airline on a day-to-day basis and also to look at the growth plans for the next 5 years. The number one priority is to renegotiate some of the leases which we had contracted some years ago, especially in relation to the 330 CEOs. But as you know, this once contracted, it's very difficult to get favorable terms on those. But we are focusing on, while working on the leases, and there are so many other, we are focusing on engineering contracts, renegotiating some of the contracts, all that, which we have made some significant achievements over the last few months.
Speaking on the order cancellation of 4 A350 aircraft from an initial order of 8, CEO of Sri Lankan Airlines Vipula Gunathilaka had this to say on the remaining 4.
We have been in dialogue with Airbus, and in fact that was one of the primary reasons that we prepared a very detailed business plan, a network plan based on, and then a fleet plan. So we have identified that we would go for some wide bodies. It would be A330-900 Neos. Our fleet would grow from current 27 to 34, and we would end up by 2023-2024 we would end up with 15 wide-body and 14 narrow-body aircraft. Plans are on the way to look at destinations like Frankfurt or Paris, and the new destinations basically Sydney, Kathmandu, and even Nairobi on the cards. Yeah.
Now, 4 Sri Lankans have been arrested by the British counter-terror police after they arrived at the Luton Airport in London. They were apprehended on Thursday over suspicion of being members of a proscribed organisation. The arrested cadre had arrived in the UK on an international flight the previous evening.
British counter-terror police arrested 4 Sri Lankans at the Luton Airport on Thursday. Their arrests were made on suspicion of links to be a proscribed organisation. The suspected cadre had arrived in the UK on Wednesday evening on board an international flight. According to the Metropolitan Police, quote, detectives from the Counter-Terrorism Command are investigating after 4 men at Luton Airport arrested on suspicion of membership of a proscribed organisation contrary to Section 11 of the Terrorism Act 2000, unquote. There, however, was no mention of which proscribed organisation the group is suspected of bearing membership of. The 4 men remain in custody at a police station in Bedfordshire while investigations into the matter continue. When inquired about the matter, a spokeswoman from Sri Lanka's Ministry of Foreign Affairs said that they are in touch with the Sri Lankan High Commission in UK with respect to the matter. Terror organisation the LTTE, which was defeated in Sri Lanka in 2009, is also included in UK's list of proscribed terrorist organisations along with the so-called ISIS.
Meanwhile, foreign media report that a former LTTE cadre was indicted by the German authorities, accusing him of committing war crimes dating back to 2008. The suspect, identified as 37-year-old Sivadeepan, was indicted for his involvement in killing 15 captured soldiers during the conflict, which came to an end in 2009.
An ex-LTTE member arrested in August last year was indicted by the German authorities yesterday for his involvement in killing 15 captured Sri Lankan military personnel while fighting for the defeated terror group. International media quote German federal prosecutors as saying yesterday that the 37-year-old Sivadeepan B is accused of membership in a terrorist organisation, war crimes, 2 cases of manslaughter and 11 cases of attempted manslaughter. German officials refrained from revealing the suspect's surname due to the country's privacy rules. Prosecutors allege that in 2008, the suspect guarded 15 captured soldiers as they were driven to a site where they were executed and later helped burn their bodies. In a separate incident a year later, he is also alleged to have shot 13 soldiers, 2 of whom succumbed.
The United Nations Subcommittee on Prevention of Torture has completed its first visit to Sri Lanka. The team concluded the visit yesterday after being in the country for 10 days. During that period, they examined the treatment of people deprived of their liberty and the safeguards in place for their protection against torture and ill treatment. Issuing a media communique yesterday, the head of the delegation, Victor Zaharia, said that they look positively on Sri Lanka's prospective development of a national preventive mechanism.
The United Nations Subcommittee on Prevention of Torture, comprised of a 4-member delegation, completed their first visit to the island yesterday. Their visit centered on examining the treatment of people deprived of their liberty and safeguards in place for their protection against torture and ill treatment. The group, led by Victor Zaharia, arrived in Sri Lanka on the 2nd of this month, left no stone unturned. They visited police stations, prisons, remand prisons, military camps, rehabilitation centers, mental health institutions, a rehabilitation center for children, and held meetings with government representatives and Sri Lanka's Human Rights Commission and civil society representatives. Issuing a media communique yesterday, Zaharia said, quote, "We have received good cooperation during the visit, having access to all places of detention, getting all relevant information and performing confidential interviews. We look positively on Sri Lanka's prospective development of a national preventive mechanism as required under the optional protocol to the Convention Against Torture," unquote. The subcommittee's next step will be to submit its confidential report to the government containing its observations and recommendations arising from the visit. It also encourages the government to make its reports public.
The dawn of the Sinhala and Tamil New Year is hours away, with Sri Lankans eagerly awaiting the arrival of a festival which brings happiness and prosperity. The auspicious times which accompany the New Year is also a must-know, with certain colours stipulated to be worn when engaging in certain tasks. Here's a quick look at what you need to know.
With the transition of Sun turning from Pisces to Aries, The Sinhala Tamil New Year is celebrated in Sri Lanka. Something that has to keep abreast during this festive season is the auspicious times, also known as Nakat. It all starts with what is called the inauspicious time, following which all manner of work, including cooking, is halted. The time is dedicated for religious observances. This season's inauspicious time falls at 7:45 tomorrow morning. Next up is the dawn of the New Year, which will arrive at 2:09 in the afternoon. The auspicious time to light the hearth and prepare meals falls at 2:42 p.m. Astrologers advise people to observe this tradition by preparing milk rice mixed with jaggery facing east, while clad in red and yellow attire. Time to commence work, engage in transactions and have meals falls at 3:54 in the afternoon. This should be done facing east, clad in red and yellow. The auspicious time to anoint oil falls on Wednesday the 17th. The anointment should be done with herbal oil, also known as nanu, has to be made out of juice extracted from neem leaves, or better known as kohumba. The herbal oil should be anointed at 7:40 a.m. with cologne leaves for feet and kohumba leaves overhead. The advised color for this auspicious time is green. The last of the auspicious times setting off for work is on the 18th at 4:52 in the morning facing east.
Now, in today's busy world where people are forced to climb professional and social ladders, there could be things we miss out on. In fact, there could actually be a lot more than what we imagine. Owing to our hectic lifestyles, the dawn of the new year, which brings about a series of traditions and customs to be observed at auspicious times, can take a back seat. With these customs being passed from generation to generation by word of mouth and through practice, there is a risk of the future generations missing out on these age-old practices. Other than that, why should we stick to them?
All these auspicious moments and what you're supposed to do add something to the family. Bring the family together. So when you play together, when I play with my granddaughter, I come together with them. But here the New Year brings us together. So being together, working together is what matters for a family. If you understand the sociological significance of being together, is very important. That's why we share food. It's a custom in our old villages to send some food to your neighbors during that time. They also send some food to us. So we share things. So sharing is a good thing. So get your children, grandchildren, understand the value of sharing, not just getting everything for yourself. Make them aware of the sociological significance of these customs, not just doing that.
When questioned whether it is mandatory to follow these customs and traditions during the Sinhala and Tamil New Year, this was the professor's response.
So if you want to go by the auspicious time, you can do it. That is, if you want it. If you don't care tuppence for it, that's the end of it. It's a matter of family. The family is together. So it's a matter of whether you want it or not. I can make an excuse, oh, I have no time. Why not? Because you have to have time, because you can't do anything else anyway. You can't go to work anyway. If you want to say, I'm very modern, I'm broad-minded, that's up to you. It's up to you. It's not a matter of being broad-minded. It's a matter of whether we are socially together. And that's what matters for me.
What children experience during this stage of their lives is what they will follow into adulthood. And that is how our traditions and customs will be handed down from generation to generation. Therefore, what can we do to make the New Year more meaningful and memorable for our children?
Now, normally the gifts are clothes. But I always add a book to this one. The clothes you give is used by that and at the end of it. But if you give him a book, that'll remain with your name, that remain, and the next generation can same book. Whenever you give a thing, give something of eternal value, a book. So I have a new idea for the new year. Among the gifts, have a book. This matters.
Minister of Transport and Civil Aviation Arjuna Ranatunga continues to be critical of Sri Lanka cricket's administration, while also pointing the finger at the current government for the downfall of the sport. Responding to journalists in Gampa yesterday, the minister pledged to back a candidate in the looming presidential election who will have the best interests of Sri Lanka's cricket at heart.
ඔබතුමා දේශපාලන තීන්දුවක් වගේ ප්‍රකාශයට පත් කරා මීළඟ ජනාධිපතිවරණයේදී සහයෝගය දැක්වීම පිළිබඳව.
ගිය මැතිවරණය යනකොටත් අපි මේ
Even during the last election, we were of the stance that cricket and other sports should be cleanly run. But unfortunately, cricket was destroyed after we brought this government to power in 2015. The incumbent administrators of cricket entered the system via the back door and have ingratiated themselves with the president and are now destroying the sport. I too have a responsibility and people chastise me for not rebuilding cricket. I've been prevented from doing so by certain persons.
The International Monetary Fund details what Sri Lanka needs to do in the election year. Stay tuned to find out.
You are watching Sri Lanka's #1 news channel. This is AdaDerana 24.
Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now, since the political impasse which took place last year, the future of Sri Lanka's economy has been under a spotlight. According to the International Monetary Fund, external shocks and domestic political uncertainty resulted in economy's weak performance in the latter half of 2018, while the fifth review under the extended fund facility under the IMF-supported program suffered a setback. But the country is faced with another challenge this year as it is about to face elections. Speaking at the IMF Asia Pacific Department media briefing in Washington yesterday, its Deputy Director, Anne-Marie Gulwolf, made it clear that Sri Lanka must continue to pursue a prudent policy mix in the run-up with sustained revenue-based fiscal consolidation. Wolf also highlighted the need to maintain market confidence and ensure state-owned enterprises undergo reforms.
Upon the conclusion of the recent visit by a staff team from the International Monetary Fund led by Manuela Goretti to resume discussions on the fifth review under Sri Lanka's economic reform program, supported by a 3-year extended fund facility arrangement, a few key recommendations were highlighted. Among these was the need for a revenue-based fiscal consolidation and reforms within state-owned enterprises in order to put Sri Lanka's high public debt on a downward path while providing space for critical social and development goals. Furthermore, the IMF noted that it is critical to strengthen resilience to shocks and market confidence by rebuilding foreign exchange reserve buffers supported by a prudent policy mix and exchange rate flexibility. During the IMF Asia and Pacific Department media briefing held in Washington yesterday, IMF officials reiterated the need for a prudent policy mix when questioned on the possible fiscal slippage that Sri Lanka might face in the run-up to elections.
We really need to emphasize 3 messages. I mean, we need to make sure that the authorities should continue to pursue prudent policy mix in the run-up with sustained revenue-based fiscal consolidation, an adequate vigilant monetary policy, and continuing efforts to build reserves. It is critical in this context that market confidence is being maintained and the economy's resilience to shocks, which has been strengthened over the past couple of months, continues to be strengthened. As you know, there is high public debt, so market confidence is a critical element. Structural reforms are ongoing. They need to focus on trade opening, SOE reforms, and increasing competitiveness.
Wolf was also questioned on Sri Lanka's labour reforms, taking into consideration Sri Lanka's ageing population.
At this point, as you know, unemployment is low, but in the forward-looking policies, competitiveness and looking at an aging population, labour reforms are essential. One of them that I would stress is increasing the participation rate of women also, which is very low in Sri Lanka.
International magazine Bunker Spot reports that the identity of the company chosen to carry out bunkering operations at the Hambantota port could be announced early next week by its occupants, the Hambantota International Port Group. The trade magazine on the bunker industry reveals that 6 global bunker players are understood to have submitted expressions of interest during 2018 on the bunkering project.
According to Bunker Spot, the company chosen to carry out bunkering operations at the Hambantota port will run the tank farm, while the Hambantota International Port Group Company Limited will play the landlord role. It went on to say that the Hambantota International Port Group may be ready early next week to announce the identity of the company chosen to carry out bunkering operations at the port. The media outlet further says that its sources could not divulge names, but a report published in Lloyd's List this week indicated that the Chinese state oil company Sinopec could could be the front runner. Bunkerspot added that this would not come as a great surprise given China's already strong involvement in the port of Hambantota and the region's wider infrastructure. Hambantota International Port Group Company has high ambitions to develop Hambantota as a major container hub and bunkering center. According to its chief operating officer, a key driver of the port's growth will be its bunkering tank farm.
Chinese President Xi Jinping's massively ambitious infrastructure investment plan, the Belt and Road Initiative, has long been controversial, raising concerns of its potential to create debt traps, erode national sovereignty, exacerbate local security risks and human rights abuses, or otherwise unequally benefit Beijing. Speaking ahead of the World Bank IMF spring meeting in Washington recently, IMF chiefs Christine Lagarde, however, sounded positive over the BRI. She said that Belt and Road Forum will be a good opportunity for China to identify its direction and the policy framework within which they want to develop this very large initiative.
Data published last month on China's official Belt and Road website, 125 countries and 29 international organizations have signed cooperation agreements with China on jointly building the Belt and Road. Up to date, the country's accumulative trade volume with Belt and Road countries surpassed $7 trillion. Furthermore, it has built 82 overseas economic cooperation zones in Belt and Road countries with investment exceeding $30 billion. But as global enthusiasm and confidence in the BRI grow, many Western nations point out that developing countries such as those in Africa and even Sri Lanka are being led into a debt trap. IMF chief Christine Lagarde, however, says that the world is short of investment in infrastructure, and the Belt and Road Initiative is certainly welcome as it focuses on financing of infrastructure around the world.
The world is short of investment in infrastructure. So the fact that an initiative such as the Belt and Road Initiative focuses on the financing of infrastructure around the world is certainly welcome. We have also encouraged and called the attention of Chinese authorities to the fact that those projects have to be adequate and appropriate for the country's needs, that those financing have to be respectful of debt sustainability. We have also mentioned that the macroeconomic framework of the countries has to be taken into account when those investments are taking place. So it's a subtle balance between infrastructure needs and the financing to go with it, with full respect of the country's sovereignty, debt sustainability, macroeconomic equilibrium. And I think that the Chinese authorities themselves are now really paying attention to that.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un tells Donald Trump that he's willing to have another summit with him. But under what conditions? Stay tuned to find out.
You are watching Sri Lanka's #1 news channel. This is AdaDerana 24.
Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now then, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un says the breakdown in talks with the United States has raised the risk of returning to past tensions, but he is only interested in meeting President Donald Trump again if the United States comes with the right attitude. State media KCNA said today that Kim will wait until the end of this year for the United States to decide.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has said he would take part in a third summit with US President Donald Trump, but only if the US brought the right attitude. North Korean state media reported the comments by Kim today. In a speech, he urged Trump to pursue a deal that was fair and mutually acceptable to both nations. The two leaders met for the first time in Singapore last year. However, a second summit in Hanoi in February broke down over denuclearization steps. Trump said North Korean officials had wanted economic sanctions lifted in their entirety in exchange for disabling a major nuclear site, provoking him to walk away. The North Koreans, however, disputed the US account of how the negotiations had broken down. Last month, North Korea's vice foreign minister accused the US of taking a gangster-like stance and said that it had thrown away a golden opportunity in Hanoi. In his most recent comments, Kim said the summit had created a strong doubt in him over whether the US genuinely wanted to improve relations.
South Sudan's coup leader himself, Defense Minister Awad bin Auf, stepped down as chief of the country's transitional ruling military council, with feared security chief General Salah Ghosh also stepping down hours after. They came hours after the military council sought to calm public anger by promising a new civilian government. Lieutenant General Abdel Fattah became the new head of Sudan's transitional ruling military council as state television broadcast his swearing-in ceremony today. Protesters are demanding quicker political change following President Omar al-Bashir's ouster by the armed forces. The military council said earlier that it expected a pre-election transition to last 2 years at most, or much less if chaos can be avoided. Now, elephants are such beautiful, majestic and thoughtful creatures who deserve appreciation. But often being seduced by their beauty and grace, people tend to forget their brute power, which can inflict considerable damage or even death. A video was seen circulating in foreign media where a mahout was killed by his elephant in India. We come across many such incidents where mahouts are killed by elephants, especially during the must, where the pachyderm is characterized by highly aggressive, irritable behavior accompanied by a spike in testosterone levels. Male elephants get a testosterone surge 50 times their normal level during must. And that's it from us at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.